When people say the internet ruined Gen Z, what they really mean is I just saw a side of humanity I wasn't emotionally prepared for. The internet didn't inject new personalities into a generation like some cursed software update. It removed the filter, it turned the lights on, it handed everyone a microphone and said, "Go ahead, be exactly who you are," and surprise people listened. What emerged wasn't a brand new species of humans. It was raw psychology and edited impulses, exaggerated traits, and ancient human behaviors wearing Wi-Fi as a hoodie. Gen Z didn't mutate. They were revealed loudly, in HD with subtitles. So let's break down what the internet actually exposed. One beautifully strange psychological truth at a time. Number 1. Unfiltered identity. Imagine being 16 and handed a global stage. Instead of a diary. And no lock, no privacy, just vibes and an upload button. Previous generations experimented with identity quietly. Bad haircuts, awkward phases, journals hidden under mattresses. Gen Z did it in public, online, with analytics. The internet became a mirror that doesn't just reflect. It records every interest, joke, insecurity, political take, and half-baked personality. Experiment gets archived, like it's evidence in a trial against your future self. Psychologically, this taps straight into identity formation. That messy period, where your brain tries on personalities, like thrift store jackets. The difference now: every jacket gets comments, likes, duets, mockery, validation, sometimes all at once. S0. Gen Z learned early identity isn't just who you are, it's what performs, and that doesn't make them fake. It makes them hyper-aware. When you grow up watched, you learn to curate without realizing you're doing it. Basically, the internet didn't create identity chaos. It live-streamed it, zoomed in, and asked everyone to rate it out of 10. Number 2. Accelerated self-awareness. Picture realizing your childhood trauma at 14, because a stranger on TikTok explained it, using Minecraft metaphors. That's new. Gen Z didn't invent introspection, but the internet handed them a crash course in psychology before their brains finished installing emotional regulation. Suddenly, everyone knows words like attachment style, burnout, dopamine loops, and emotional labor, terms previous generations discovered after a divorce. And 3 self-help books. The human brain loves labels. They reduce chaos. They make pain feel organized. So Gen Z grabbed psychological language, like a survival kit, sometimes responsibly, sometimes like a toddler with a flamethrower. Self-awareness became a social currency. If you could explain your own flaws in clever terms, you were evolved. If you couldn't, you were toxic. The result? A generation unusually articulate about their feelings, and unusually overwhelmed by them. Knowing what's wrong doesn't mean knowing what to do. That's the punchline. You can diagnose your anxiety perfectly and still panic because someone typed K. The internet didn't make Gen Z fragile, it made them conscious, earlier than the nervous system is designed for. Like turning on stadium lights, while the brain is still tying its shoes. Basically, your mind learned to narrate the disaster, while actively sliding down the hill. Number 3. Humor as emotional armor. Imagine laughing at your problems so hard that they stop knowing whether they're being acknowledged or mocked. That's Gen Z humor: dark jokes, absurd memes, ironic detachment stacked on top of sincere despair, like a psychological lasagna. This isn't because Gen Z is heartless. It's because humor is cheaper than therapy and faster than processing emotions. The internet rewards comedy that arrives before vulnerability. If you joke about your own mental breakdown first, nobody else gets to weaponize it. That's not nihilism, that's preemptive defense. Psychologically, this is classic coping through reappraisal. You reframe pain as something ridiculous. Your brain goes, "Oh, we are laughing. Cool, no need to scream temporarily." The problem is that when everything is ironic, nothing is resolved. The joke becomes the container for feelings that never get unpacked. Sadness shows up wearing clown makeup, and everyone claps. Gen Z didn't invent gallows humor, but the internet scaled it, made it shareable, gave it captions and background music. Now, existential dread fits neatly into a 15-second loop. So when you see someone joking about burnout at 19, that's not on seriousness. That's a nervous system whispering, "Please don't look directly at this." Basically, laughter didn't cure the wound. It just taught it stand-up comedy. Number 4. Performance over presence. Imagine having a moment, a real one. A beautiful sunset. A breakdown. A victory. Now imagine your brain immediately asking, "Should I post this?" That reflex wasn't programmed by Gen Z. It was revealed by the internet. Humans have always performed socially. We are just tone posture, jokes and opinions depending on who's watching. The difference now is that someone is always watching, or at least it feels that way. Even when you're alone, the audience lives in your head, like an unpaid intern taking notes. So Gen Z learned to experience life twice, once in real time and once as potential content. Presence competes with documentation, emotion competes with framing, and the brain starts prioritizing how things look over how they feel neurologically. This messes with reward pathways. The dopamine hit shifts from the experience itself to the reaction afterward. The moment isn't complete until it's validated. Silence becomes suspicious. If nobody saw it, did it even count? This doesn't make Gen Z shallow. It makes them hypersocial. In an environment with no off switch, being perceived became the default state. So when someone films their own vulnerability, it's not narcissism, it's adaptation, a brain evolving to survive. In a world where existence is measured in engagement, basically life stopped being lived. It started being uploaded. Number 5. Emotional speedrunning. Imagine processing grief the way people binge a TV show. Season 1 shock. Season 2 memes. Finale character development. That's emotional speedrunning. And Gen Z didn't invent it. The internet trained it. Online life moves fast. Trends expire in days. Discourse ages in hours. If you don't react quickly, you vanish from the conversation, like an NPC who missed their cue. So emotions learn to sprint. Sadness, anger, joy, outrage, all experienced on 1.5x playback. Your nervous system, however, was designed for walking slowly, with pauses, with digestion time. When feelings are rushed, they don't disappear, they stack. Unprocessed emotions pile up like unread notifications, quietly draining your mental battery. Psychologically, this creates a strange contradiction. Gen Z feels everything intensely, yet rarely sits with anything long enough to metabolize it. There's always a new stimulus pulling attention away. A new video, a new crisis, a new joke to soften the impact. So when emotions resurface later, as numbness or burnout, it feels confusing. Didn't I already deal with this? Yes. Briefly, publicly, performatively. The internet didn't make Gen Z dramatic. It taught them that lingering is dangerous, and speed looks like strength. Basically, your feelings didn't get processed. They got fast-forwarded and shoved into emotional storage. Number 6. Boundary obsession. Imagine growing up watching adults overshare online, then being told you need healthier boundaries. Gen Z didn't wake up one day and decide to weaponize the word boundaries. They watched what happens when you don't have any group chats. That implode. Influences melting down in real time. Family drama live tweeted like a sporting event. So their brains adapted fast. Psychologically, boundaries are about safety. When your environment feels unpredictable, you create rules to control exposure. Gen Z just learned this lesson publicly, and early, very early, sometimes before they learned how to negotiate conflict without blocking someone forever. The internet blurred every line: work and rest, friends and audience, private thoughts and public content. So Gen Z overcorrected hard. Suddenly saying no isn't rude, It's a personality trait. Cutting people off isn't avoidance. It's protecting my peace. And sometimes, yeah, that's valid. Other times, it's emotional ghosting wrapped in wellness language. The irony is that constant boundary setting can become its own performance. Announcing distance instead of practicing communication, declaring healing instead of doing it. The language sounds evolved, but the nervous system is still white-knuckling control. The internet didn't make Gen Z selfish. It taught them that exposure hurts, and privacy feels like oxygen. Basically, boundaries became less about balance and more about survival fencing. Number 7. Identity as community. Imagine discovering who you are by finding people who feel exactly the same way online. That's not narcissism. That's belonging for most of human history. Identity was shaped locally. Your town, your family, your job, your weird neighbor with opinions. If you felt different, you often felt alone. Gen Z didn't get that version. They got search bars feeling anxious. There's a community gender questioning. A community burned out, hyper-fixated. Socially exhausted, but still lonely. Several communities actually. All with memes. Psychologically, humans wire identity through mirroring. We learn who we are by seeing ourselves reflected in others. The internet just made mirrors infinite. Suddenly niche experiences weren't isolating. They were content categories. This was empowering and dangerous. When identity fuses too tightly with community labels, disagreement feels like a threat to self. Growth feels like betrayal. Leaving a label can feel like exile. You're not just changing your mind, you're abandoning your people. So Gen Z learned to defend identity like territory, not because they're fragile, but because belonging finally became accessible, and losing it feels unbearable. The internet didn't make Gen Z obsessed with labels. It made loneliness optional at a psychological cost. Basically, identity stopped being just who you are. It became where you belong. Number 8. Chronic comparison syndrome. Imagine comparing yourself to everyone who has ever lived. Before breakfast. That's not ambition. That's algorithmic exposure. Gen Z didn't become insecure out of nowhere. Their brains just grew up inside the largest comparison machine ever built. Not just celebrities anymore, peers, classmates, teenagers with million-dollar brands and perfect lighting, who somehow have time to be emotionally intelligent too. Your brain evolved to compare itself to maybe 150 people, a village, a tribe, not a global leaderboard updated every second. When you constantly see the highlight reels of others, your own life starts feeling like behind-the-scenes footage. Nobody asked for neurologically. This hijacks self-worth. Achievement stops being internal and becomes relative. You're not asking, am I okay? You're asking, am I ahead or behind? And there's always someone ahead. Always. So Gen Z oscillates between confidence and despair at record speed. One good post, and you feel powerful. One scroll later, and you feel obsolete. The comparison never ends because the feed never ends. This doesn't make them vain. It makes them overstimulated by standards that shift hourly. You can't win a game when the rules are rewritten by an algorithm that feeds on insecurity. Basically, your self-esteem didn't collapse. It got stuck in an infinite comparison loop with no exit sign. Number 9. Intimacy without proximity. Imagine knowing someone's deepest trauma, but not their last name. That's modern connection. Gen Z didn't get less social. They got socially redistributed. The internet taught their brains that intimacy doesn't require physical presence, just emotional disclosure and Wi-Fi. You can confess fears at 3:00 a.m. to someone across the world and feel closer to them than to the person sitting next to you on the couch. Psychologically, this works because the brain prioritizes emotional availability over location. When someone listens, validates, responds quickly, and shares back, your nervous system goes, ah yes. Safe human distance becomes irrelevant. But here's the twist. Intimacy without proximity skips friction. No awkward silences. No body language. No smell tone shifts or real-world inconvenience. You can log off. You can disappear. You can curate vulnerability like a playlist. So relationships feel intense, fast and fragile. Deep bonds form quickly and evaporate just as fast. When conflict appears, there's no shared physical reality to anchor it. Just text, just interpretation, just ghosts. This doesn't mean Gen Z can't connect deeply. It means their brains learned closeness in a medium that doesn't train endurance. Emotional sprinting instead of relational hiking. The internet didn't make relationships fake. It made them lightweight, easy to lift, easy to drop basically. Intimacy stopped requiring a room and started requiring a signal.